I wouldn't say I was having buyer's remorse, but it's just more of like, I'm spending a lot of money here. Was this good investment? I have mixed feelings. I think I'm gonna keep it. But if you guys don't wanna watch this whole video, here's just a wrap up for the beginning. The RF has better flare control, it picks up on the face and eye better, and it's sharper, and it has a better close focus distance. For everyone that's still here watching the video, let's just jump in and look at the footage. All right guys, I'm testing out, finally, the Canon RF 24-70 and the EF 24-70. I kind of have a hunch that the EF 24-70 is going to be just as good. The RF has better flare control. I know that for sure, which I like backlighting mostly, and so it's kind of a game changer. This does have IS. I don't really need IS for most of the stuff I do. Even for video, I don't really use this lens. But yeah, let's just get into it and find out. All right guys, like I mentioned, I had a feeling that the RF flare control was going to be way better just from the past like dozen times I've used it. I was renting it for some gigs, and then after owning it, I've used it on a handful of shoots now, and right off the bat, I noticed that the flare was better. So let me just show you guys that real quick. So we're just gonna repeat these clips. It's gonna go to RF to EF, RF to EF. So you'll see right here, we have RF, and you see those flares look really clean, really subtle, you know, and then EF, you see it's kind of just like a blast in your face, which I understand that some people might like that look, but personally, I want a cleaner look for my digital cameras. If I want a more gritty look, I will shoot it on film. But I definitely like the more cleaner look, and on top of that, I like backlighting a lot, and so I have had ruined shots because the EF's flare is just insane. It takes over the shots, and I don't notice it while I'm shooting it. The RF, you can see, is just way cleaner. Now, and you see it focusing is just fine on that situation. And then for these ones, I zoomed in. I zoomed in a little bit more on the EF, but I mean, it's kind of the same thing. So you can see there's our flares again. So now on the RF, you can see the flares are a little bit more intense, but still pretty clean. And on the EF, you see it's just kind of, I mean, it still looks beautiful. Like the whole reason I like backlighting a lot for portraits too is you get this really filled out look. You're basically getting light reflecting within the lens, and it kind of fills the face in a little bit, so it's almost like you're using a reflector. And then on the RF, you see when we get a flare, kind of the same thing, but it's way more subtle and clean. I honestly love the look of this flaring way more than this crazy EF flaring right here. Now this shot, I just had Deidre run around. So let's just start again with the RF. See her in the back of her, it goes in the tracking mode, loses her, and then you see it picks up on her face, goes to the eyes, gets closer, goes back tracking, tracks the back of her head. I feel like a sports announcer right now, but you see it sticks on her pretty good, right? Now we'll go to the EF, and you see the EF does really good too. But one thing I noticed is we lose her a little bit more, but also the RF did a lot better on keeping on her face and eye. The EF goes into that that mode a lot more than the RF does. So you see it still hasn't picked up her face, I have to go back. So you see it loses, and then right there it picks up. So it's a little bit more erratic than the RF, but let's just watch the RF one more time. See, it's picking up her face there. It's holding on it pretty well on her eye. Even with her head turned around, still it's tracking her head that whole time. They both lose her in that same spot right there, but it comes back, and it's pretty solid on her eye. And then again, here's the ES, starts the same, loses her immediately, goes to her face, and then only goes to her face for a second, and then back to her body. Does well there, loses her again, and then you see it's taking a minute to get back to her face. So I think it's still pretty crazy that the EF still does like that well. You would think that this older lens, I mean, it's not that old, but I mean, it's definitely older than RF, wouldn't hold up as well. But clearly you can still use the EF lenses on here and you're going to do just fine. So now let's just look at the flares, the photos of the flares. Again, this wasn't like a super scientific test, so they're not perfectly matched up on here. But this is the RF on top and the EF on the bottom. So you see the RF just has a little bit more like clarity with that burst of light, and then the EF is kind of just like blowing out the photo a little bit more. It's like, look at her jacket. The sun's pretty much in the same spot. Look at her jacket on the EF, like we're losing a lot of details, and on the RF, look, all that detail is still in there. So whatever coatings they did, it's really helping this flare control. Let's go down a little bit more. Again, you can see on the RF, we're still getting all like this beautiful tonality in this jacket. And then down here, it's a lot of the details just kind of getting blown out. The rest of these shots, again, these are all just the EF right here. So I just want to show you how erratic that EF flare can be. And then let's go back to the RF, and you just see there's a huge difference. It's just, here's our orbs down here, and on the EF, it's just getting tossed all around the place. So yeah, the RF's flare control is just kind of like next level. Now, here's our sharpness test. I was kind of a foot too close for the wide. RF again is on top, the EF is on the bottom, but also in the EF, I was a little bit too close. So on these shots, you can see, again, we're at 24 millimeters on both. They look pretty similar. The 24 millimeters on the Canon EF is pretty good. One thing I didn't get to test is corner sharpness. I believe on the RF it's better. The reason corner sharpness is important is, say if you're doing a group shot and you're filling in the frame, or you're doing like a portrait shot and the head's like way up here on the top, you want to make sure that there's not a whole lot of distortion going on up top. Now, you can see the vignetting is still really bad on the RF, and currently Capture One does not have the lens profile for the RF, which is annoying. This is the RF profiles they have right here. They have the 24 to 105, the 20 to 70, 35 millimeter, and the 50 millimeter. I guess we could try the 2405, totally different lenses, but so yeah, you can see when the vignette is on, it looks way cleaner. So now we're punched into these tire shots over here, punching 100%. You see that the RF is at 64 millimeters. I'm meant to put 70, but it shouldn't make that big of a difference. But you can clearly see the RF is pretty freaking sharp for being a zoom. Like this looks like a prime. And then on the EF, we can see her eyebrows up here. There's not a whole lot of detail. And on the RF, there's just like crazy detail up there. And then on her eye too, you can see her eye just has a little bit more punch on the RF. Now what's important is when we're zoomed out, you can't really see the difference in either of these. So if you have the EF, you're going to be just fine. RF is definitely an investment. You're going to be set for life. RF is still so new that we don't have like crazy support for it yet. And there's still so many lenses that Canon needs to make to catch up. But I'm assuming in the next 3 years, most of those are going to be filled out. It's 40 degrees here in California. And so that means I'm freezing because I'm skinny and my bones get cold. So now that the important stuff's over, let's go talk about build quality and a couple other things. First, I will say I hate adapters. With all my past cinema cameras and stuff, having to use like speed boosters and all that, I despise speed boosters and adapters. I'll use them when I have to, but I'd rather just have a native lens on the camera. It's one less thing that can go wrong, one less thing that you could forget, one less thing that can mess up your whole shoot. Having to juggle around this and my RF 70-200, it was just kind of getting annoying. I also have this Sigma 50mm 1.8. I'm going to sell this now because this RF 24-70 is pretty freaking sharp. So yeah, let's just go over build quality real quick. The EF 24-70, I don't want to say it feels ancient, but it's definitely, the design on it is a little bit dated. I'm gonna fucking punch this camera, there it goes. The RF glass is just built very like modern and sleek looking. I don't really have too much complaints about the build quality. I guess it's like high grade plastic or something like that. I don't know, don't quote me on that. I would Google that yourself, but yeah, it feels just fine to me. Weight wise, it feels almost the same. I mean, weight's not an issue to me. Like who the hell cares if a lens is heavy? But the 28-70, it's definitely, that thing's huge. I was contemplating getting that, but I barely even shoot at 2.8 on like my actual professional gigs. Only time I go to 2.8 is if like we're losing all the light. That's what's cool about fast primes, is if you're in like a really low light situation, being able to open up your aperture helps a lot. But again, with that said, in my bigger paid gigs, I'm not gonna shoot in light like that, and I'm definitely not gonna shoot wide open like that, because if the clothes or whatever are out of focus, the client's not gonna be happy with that. When I'm shooting on gigs like that, I'm usually at f4, f5.6, sometimes even f8. I don't go to 2.8 because there's still too much bokeh at 2.8. So when I'm doing like more of my test shoots and model development shoots and creative stuff, I'll shoot at 2.8. 2.8 is kind of fun for portraits sometimes because you could blow out the rest of the skin and smooth the skin off a little bit. But even 1.8 on a portrait, I've never been a fan of. It blows out too much detail. I prefer shooting on location in like a beautiful outdoor setting, and I don't want to blur that out too much. What I do like faster primes for is wider angle, because you start losing that separation on wider angles. And so having more bokeh on that kind of helps separate your subject from the background. But even at 2.8, you still get that effect, just not as crazy. So when you do slap on the EF to RF adapter on the 24-70, once you realize that you have to run this adapter on the EF at all times, the RF starts seeming even a little bit more compact and even more modern, I guess you can say. I have the C70, I'm selling this though. All the amazing features ended up not being great for the way I film. I'm a little bit nitty gritty in the dirt. So I will be getting the Komodo, and I was kind of scared just overall about RF lenses because they're focused by wire. When the EF, if you don't know what that means, basically the EF, you can see it's a mechanical focus. So when we get to the end, it stops. And when you get to that way, you feel it stop. The ring will keep spinning, but you can feel the lens stop because the mechanical focus has reached its limit. That helps a lot for when you're doing video or any type of manual focus. And then the RF, you don't have that at all. It's pretty much all electronic based. So as you spin that ring, it's not gonna be super consistent. I thought that, but with any like RF mount camera, I'm not sure about the Komodo, but with the C70 and R5, you could change it to where the focus ring is not controlled by speed, but by degree. And so I was still skeptical about it. I was like, there's no way it's gonna be accurate. It's accurate and it's super consistent actually. So that whole stress and worry is kind of out the door. Granted, I haven't used the mount of focus on an actual gig. When you use gear on an actual gig, that's when you really learn what matters. You can watch all these YouTubers that talk about all this technical shit, but when it comes down to like actually doing work with it, all that stuff goes out the window and the more important stuff comes into fruition. Fruition? I don't know. There's not much else to say about it. They're lenses, they're both amazing. I do think the EF kind of holds up to the RF a little bit, but the RF definitely takes it the next step up and it definitely makes it a lot cleaner. So as I'm continually trying to get bigger and bigger commercial clients, I want cleaner lenses. I want lenses that will give me less issues. I want gear that will give me less issues, that just goes together perfectly and I don't have to adapt or anything like that. So I will be keeping the RF. I will be selling the 24-70. I'm kind of bummed because I was looking forward to getting the Komodo with all the ND adapters, but I think I'm just gonna rock all RF glass and all my Freewell variable NDs. Again, I probably won't be using the 24-70 for video work. I'll probably just be using the Sigma 18-35 that I'm using right now, and the Sirui lenses for my more creative work because I freaking love anamorphic, and this thing makes it way easier. So anyways, I'm just rambling on about other gear that doesn't matter. So yeah, RF is awesome. Do you need to upgrade your lens to RF? I don't think so. If you're like me and you get super annoyed with adapters and just like having to keep extra pieces around and stuff and you stress over it, just get the RF. It'll be worth it. You'll be set for the next 10 years because that's how good the lenses are. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it.